Hey guys, Dylan with onX here. So today we're going to go through a few things. We're going to talk about what makes onX Hunt the complete package for Western hunting. We're going to dive into some of the layers and the features of onX Hunt that I specifically use when out Western hunting. And hopefully you'll pick up a few things along the way that will help you out in this season. So we're on the computer here, mostly for ease of use. Obviously, if you're in the field, you're going to be navigating right off of your phone, using your phone essentially as a GPS. We'll kind of dive right in, starting out with Basemaps. So on the computer here, it looks slightly different on the phone, but essentially everything we're looking at on the computer, you get right on your phone in the field. Doesn't matter if you have service or without service. We'll dive into that in a minute. But starting out with Basemaps, so on the computer here in the bottom right, if you go ahead and tap that, we've got three different options. So we have a satellite option, a hybrid option, and then a topo. Obviously, we're talking about Western here. Topo is going to be a little bit more relevant. Specifically for me, I am a big fan of topo over aerial imagery if I have the choice, but both of them definitely have their places. So again, diving in here, we can switch it to a topo. You can see clearly the main topo lines if you zoom in here, and then the smaller, lighter lines indicating, ridge lines, crags, valleys, whatever you want to call them. But personally, I usually am in topo most of the time. You can do a hybrid option, so that will do an aerial image with the topo overlay on top of it, which is helpful if you're looking for parks in relation to, say, benches, northern facing timber for let's say elk bedding areas. You can see what's timbered, and then with the topo you can also see how steep it is, if there's any benches that might hold elk, etc. And then we have the satellite option, which you can select that and it will just be satellite. Taking it one step further, especially on the computer for e-scouting or whatever you want to do, if you tap that same button down here, you have a 2D and a 3D map option. I'll zoom back out here and then tap the 3D. So if you select 3D, obviously that's gonna pan your map, as you can see here. And so if you hit Control and then move your mouse around, you can navigate the map in 3D and really get in and see what those areas look like in 3D mode. So that is super helpful for me for e-scouting, especially if you don't have a ton of time, and even if you do have a lot of time to put boots on the ground before season starts, e-scouting is just going to help you be more successful that way. And the recent updates to 3D have improved that greatly. So we'll go back to 2D here and then kind of dive into some of my favorite layers. As you can see right now, we're looking at a map with really no layers, no data on top of it. If you go to the upper left here, you go to map layers. We've got my layers and then layer library. So we're in Montana right now. Our home state where onX is from. And so you can turn these layers on and off. I always have public and private, so Montana private lands on, Montana government lands on. So for that private lands, obviously, probably a refresher here, but you're gonna see who owns that private property, the boundaries, as you can see, and then the government lands will show you whether it's BLM, state, forest, etc. Hunting districts, I've always got that one selected personally, and you can also go into layer settings. And for the states that have this, so Montana, we actually have different game management units per species. So you can actually go in here, and if I'm hunting antelope, I can select antelope units. Let me zoom out here so you can see those change. Let's see, so deer, elk, lion is kind of the general one, and then like I said, you can select antelope units, the bighorn sheep, bison, etc. So if your state does have different units for different species, go to the sub layers and you can change those there. Possible access is another one that I personally usually have on. It just shows me areas that maybe it's a timber company land, shows me areas and opportunities that, you know, I might have access to. I have to do some more research when I see those and see, okay, does that allow me to hunt in that area? What are the parameters, if any, and et cetera. But it opens up the acreage to more access. Montana block management, some states have different opportunities where you can, so you can see those pulling up here with the dotted red. Different opportunities where you can hunt private land. This one's through FWP. So this one here says type 1. That tells me, in conjunction with these triangles on the map, which are sign-in boxes, I can go to one of these sign-in boxes, sign my name, and essentially go hunt it. I do have to do some more research for that particular block management and say, look at if there's any species limits or date limits, but essentially type 1 I can sign in, go hunt. Type 2 I have to contact ahead of time. So just another layer that I have on. Several times I've been driving down the road and looked over and saw a nice antelope or mule deer or whatever I'm after, and look on the map and find out it's in block management. So something to look at there. Obviously we have a lot more, but looking into the hunt specific layers, right now we have active wildfire layer turned on. That will show you, you know, where current wildfires are in the sizes and parameters in case that impedes with your hunt plans or anything like that. And then also for planning, especially with scouting, back to e-scouting, historic wildfire is one that I use pretty often. It'll show areas that have burnt, and then if you zoom in like I'm doing here, select that, you can find out much more information. You can scroll down to that specific fire, see the name, the acreage, and more importantly to me, the date that burnt. So this one was in 2017, so we'd be looking at about 4 years ago there. Probably some pretty good feed, and if I hunt the fringes of that burn, I'm probably going to find some good population of elk or deer, whatever I'm after. So going back into the layers, we have several more here. Again, in e-scouting, I use the roadless layer quite a bit. So if you turn that one on, zoom out, the white areas that you see on my map right now are areas that are essentially roadless or have very few roads through them. So if you're trying to get away from crowds or do a backpack bivvy style hunt, that's a good layer to check out there. So as I said, lots more layers. Trails and trail mileage, trail slope are another one that I use pretty frequently. It will show you the trails in and out of areas, and then the more that you zoom in, you can actually see the mileage in between them, and then it is color coded with the trail slope. So the greener areas of the trail are going to be more flat, and if I turn on my topo, in conjunction with that, you can kind of see what that means. So the greener areas here are going to be more flat, red areas are going to be a lot steeper part of the trail. So that helps me as I'm planning hunts and even just on hunts, you know, especially if you're successful and you're on a pack out, instead of maybe climbing over deadfall, you can look at the app, look at the map and see, okay, if we head up this ridge, we'll hit a trail, and that's going to essentially save us a lot of time. So moving down from layers, and actually one more thing. So layer library, there's a ton of other layers in here that you can add. Obviously all of the other states. We've got crop data layers. I've used this one quite a bit this year already for elk hunting, and I'll use it into a late season mule deer hunt. More specifically looking at alfalfa and hay. So if I have these turned on, it will show on the map where last season there was alfalfa and hay planted. If I'm hunting, let's say public land that's close to private, and there was alfalfa there's a good chance there's going to be something similar planted this year, which is going to attract elk, deer, antelope, what have you, to that area. So just helps me visualize, you know, maybe the travel patterns of animals as they're feeding and bedding, and then also being able to hunt them in the transition areas. So lots more in the map layers. Moving to offline maps. So new to this year, you can now queue up an offline map right on your desktop. So if I'm e-scouting this area and I want to save it for offline use because I know when I go out there I'm not going to have cell service, I can actually go in offline map and move this around, save this area. I can name it, I can put a note to it, save, and then I can queue it up on my phone to download. Obviously, you can do that right within your phone as well. Personally, I have the entire state of Montana saved with a 100-mile map. So the largest map possible, I've got the whole state of Montana saved. That way, no matter where I'm at all times, I am good to go. I'm never without a map. And then specifically on my hunt areas, I go in and save them in a 5 or a 10-mile map. That allows me to see those particular areas in a lot more fine detail. So cleaner aerial imagery, say if you find a bedded mule deer or something and you need to zoom in and figure out where, under what tree is that buck bedded, for those particular cases. So definitely save your maps. The app does work with and without cell service, as long as you save your map ahead of time. So I would say that's one of our most commonly misused features, if you will, is people forget to save their maps before heading out into the field. So don't forget to save your maps, and everything we're looking at here will be with you without cell service on your phone. So moving over to tools, so it's full functionality as far as GPS goes. You can mark waypoints, you can track yourself, you can do line distance tools, area shape, and do a lot of cool things with these. So if I zoom in here and say I want to mark a waypoint for this little benchy area here, I can not only mark the waypoint, but I can change the color on it. So a lot of times I will color coordinate between different species or different years. So for example, all of my elk waypoints might be red, all my mule deer waypoints might be blue. Especially if I'm hunting in the same area, then I can filter those waypoints out to see and show only what I want to see at any particular given time. But also I can go in and change the waypoint type. So as you can see here, a ton of different waypoint options. I'll mark this one pinch point, but you can do elk, mule deer, shed, whatever you want to do there. I can also drop a note in here to explain kind of what I was thinking. I can add a photo to it, or in the field I can take a photo, snap a photo right on my phone, which is helpful, especially if you're looking at a wallow or something of that nature, just to visually reference in the future. Go ahead, save it, and then so we've got a couple of options here. We've got a wind direction option that we can apply to that waypoint, and also a waypoint radius, which are a couple newer features, both incredibly helpful. I personally like the waypoint radius a lot for glassing, or if I was planning on sitting on this bench and glassing across, then I could put a waypoint radius on it. Let's say I want to be able to shoot effectively out to 300 yards. I can apply it, see, well, that's not going to get me very far from this point. So it's a good indicator for glassing, for shooting opportunities, and once I have that on there, I can remove that or just hide it, and it stays with that waypoint. So lots of cool things you can do with that. Line distance is another one that I use pretty frequently, so I'll just continue to use this right here as an example. I can click there and say, okay, if I'm glassing to this ridge over here, well, that's about a mile, and back to this basin here is about 650 yards. So helpful tool for a lot of different things, and if I want to save it, I can change the color, I can change the style, add notes, and save that. So that's another one there that I use pretty frequently. And one specifically on the phone is the tracker. So I am constantly tracking myself, whether it be an area that I know pretty well or a brand new area. Not only will I mark, let's say, my pickup, so I know how to get back to it safely in case I got turned around or just come out a different way, but I will track myself. That way, if I find a good way into an area, then I will save that track and use that, especially the next day if I say I'm going in the dark and it just looks differently. It's easy to get turned around and go through deadfall. If I find any good track into an area, I save it, and I usually change that color to know that that's a good way into an area. I've actually saved tracks for bad ways into an area that's covered in deadfall or anything, and save those a different color so I know, okay, I've done this track before and it's not a good route. But honestly too, tracking just for safety purpose, pack outs, anything like that is really helpful, just in case you were to happen to get turned around. You can save those tracks and use them down the road. And then additionally, for tracks, waypoints, in any of these that we've been talking about here, you can share those with friends. So on the phone and even on the computer here, you can tap on the waypoint, tap share, and go about it that way. It's super easy. I've used this feature a ton in the field, not only for, hey, let's meet up in this area. I might be going to a camp spot before somebody, but also I've used it in the field with, hey, I've been successful, I'm by myself. Here's the waypoint to where I'm at. If you can come help, that would be awesome. So on top of that, also just sharing waypoints for friends and family, just to know where you're at for safety purposes, is incredibly helpful. So let's see. Now that we talked about some of the tools I use, let's go to my content. So if I click on my content, there's not much in here right now. I'm on a dummy account right now, so all of my waypoints aren't flashed across the screen. But if you go to my content, you can sort, you can filter. If you go to waypoints, it will show you your waypoints. You can hide them on the map. You can show them on the map. And it's really just a good way to filter everything that you have and keep track of everything. You can also include those into folders, which is incredibly helpful for, again, just another way to organize your map. As you acquire waypoints year after year, your map can look incredibly cluttered. And if you throw those into different folders for species or seasons, you can check and uncheck that to show them on the map. So one other thing down here I do want to mention real quick is the weather. So on the bottom right here, you can check that. You can go weekly, hourly, you can show the moon phase, sunrise, sunset. Incredibly helpful for planning how to layer the next day, what to pack for a week-long bivvy hunt, etc. So just one more cool new thing within the app. But we kind of just did an overview of some of the key things within the Hunt app that I use. Everybody uses the map a little bit differently, but definitely put the app to use this year. If you haven't already, download, get a free 7-day trial, check it out. And hopefully you put some of these tips and tricks to use this year and become more successful this season.